The propositions a amber glow of late afternoon sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marcus Wellington's corner office, casting long shadows across his mahogany desk. At 35, he had everything a man could want. Penthouse apartment overlooking the city, a seven-figure salary, and the respect of his peers at Blackstone and Associates. Yet as he stared at the elegant invitation to the company's annual Excellence Awards dinner, all he could think about was showing up alone. Again, the memory of last year's dinner still stung. He'd watched from across the room as his ex-wife, Victoria, glided through the crowd on the arm of her new husband, a successful surgeon who seemed to hang on her every word. The pitying glances from his colleagues, the awkward small talk about his bachelor lifestyle, and the way conversations died when he approached couples. It had been excruciating. Marcus loosened his silk tie and rubbed his temples. The divorce had been finalized 18 months ago, but the wounds felt fresh every time he attended these corporate functions. Victoria had been his college sweetheart, his partner for 12 years, and losing her had left him feeling like a stranger in his own life. Dating felt impossible. Every woman he met seemed more interested in his portfolio than his personality. His assistant knocked on the doorframe. "Mr. Wellington? The car is waiting to take you to your dinner reservation." "Thank you, Jennifer. I'll be right down." Marcus grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator, his mind still churning. Tomorrow night's dinner would be filled with the city's elite clients, competitors and colleagues, all accompanied by their significant others. The thought of enduring another evening of polite inquiries about his love life made his stomach clench. 20 minutes later, he found himself in the warm, bustling atmosphere of Rosie's Cafe, a small neighborhood spot he'd discovered during his post-divorce wandering phase. The contrast to his usual high-end restaurants was exactly what he needed. No pretense, no networking, just good food and anonymity. "Welcome to Rosie's Table for One." The voice belonged to a young woman with kind brown eyes and auburn hair, pulled back in a messy bun. Her name tag read Sophia, and there was something about her genuine smile that made Marcus's pause. "Yes, please. Somewhere quiet if possible." Sophia led him to a corner booth, her movements graceful, despite the chaos of the dinner rush around them. As she set down the menu, Marcus noticed the stack of academic journals peeking out from behind the counter and the small notebook filled with what looked like research notes. "Graduate student?" he asked, surprising himself with a question. Sophia's eyes brightened. "PhD candidate, actually anthropology. This job helps pay the bills while I finish my dissertation." She paused, studying his expensive suit and gold watch. "Let me guess. Finance? Investment banking? How did you know?" "The way you checked your phone 3 times while walking to the table, and that look in your eyes like you're constantly calculating something." Her smile was teasing but not unkind. "I'll give you a few minutes to decide on food." As Sophia moved to check on other tables, Marcus found himself watching her interactions with customers. She remembered an elderly man's usual order, laughed at a child's joke, and handled a demanding customer with patience that never felt forced. There was an authenticity about her that felt foreign in his world of carefully constructed personas. When she returned to take his order, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible an hour earlier. "Sophia, this might sound crazy, but I have a proposition for you." He kept his voice low, acutely aware of how this might sound. "I need a date for a corporate event tomorrow night. It's important for my career, and He paused, feeling foolish. "I'm willing to pay you $3,000 to accompany me. Nothing inappropriate, just dinner and conversation for a few hours." Sophia's pen stopped moving across her notepad. She looked up at him with a mixture of surprise and wariness. "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I know how it sounds, but it's purely professional. You'd be helping me avoid some very awkward conversations with my colleagues, and the money could help with your studies. Think of it as a very well-paid acting job." For a long moment, Sophia studied his face, and Marcus realized he was holding his breath. Finally, she set down her pen and met his gaze directly. "Why me? Surely someone in your circle would be happy to accompany you. Because everyone in my circle has an agenda." "You're real, Sophia." In a room full of people performing, Their success, that authenticity, would be. He searched for the right word. Refreshing. Sophia glanced around the cafe, at the stack of bills behind the register, at her research notes covered in coffee rings. Marcus could almost see her weighing options, calculating necessities against risks. $3,000 for one evening? Evening. I'll provide everything you need. Dress, shoes, transportation. All you have to do is be yourself. After what felt like an eternity, Sophia nodded slowly. All right, Marcus Wellington, you have yourself a deal. The performance, the reflection staring back at Sophia from the full-length mirror in the boutique dressing room, barely looked like the same woman who had served coffee and cleared tables just 12 hours earlier. The midnight blue gown, Marcus had arranged for her to select fit perfectly, its elegant lines making her feel both sophisticated and oddly vulnerable. The stylist he'd hired had transformed her usual messy bun into an intricate updo. And professional makeup had enhanced her natural features without making her feel like a stranger to herself. "You look absolutely stunning," the boutique owner assured her as she emerged from the dressing room. "Mr. Wellington has excellent taste." Sophia smoothed the silky fabric nervously. The dress probably cost more than she made in 3 months at the cafe. Everything about this evening felt surreal, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. When the sleek black town car arrived to collect her, she almost backed out entirely. Marcus was waiting in the lobby of the Grand Meridian Hotel, and when he turned to greet her, his expression made her breath catch. He looked genuinely stunned, as if he hadn't quite expected his plan to work so well. In his perfectly tailored tuxedo, he was undeniably handsome, but it was the momentary vulnerability in his eyes that made her heart skip. "Sophia, you look." He paused, seeming to search for words. "Incredible. Thank you for doing this." "Thank you for the transformation," she replied, gesturing to her outfit. "I feel like Cinderella, which probably makes you my fairy godmother." Marcus laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "I prefer to think of myself as more of a business partner for the evening." As they entered the hotel's grand ballroom, Sophia was struck by the opulence surrounding them. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across marble floors, while hundreds of elegantly dressed guests mingled beneath soaring ceilings adorned with classical frescoes. The soft murmur of conversation mixed with the gentle notes of a string quartet, creating an atmosphere of refined luxury that felt both magical and intimidating. "Remember," Marcus murmured as they approached the reception area, "we've been dating for about 3 months. We met through mutual friends, and you're finishing your PhD in anthropology. Keep everything else as close to the truth as possible. It's easier that way." Before Sophia could respond, a distinguished older man with silver hair approached, them with arms outstretched. "Marcus, there you are. And this must be the mysterious woman we've all been hearing whispers about. Robert, I'd like you to meet Sophia Chen." "Sophia, this is Robert Blackstone, the founding partner of our firm." Sophia extended her hand with a smile. "It's wonderful to meet you, Mr. Blackstone. Marcus speaks of you often." "Please call me Robert." "May I say Marcus has been keeping you far too much to himself." "What is it you do, my dear?" "I'm completing my doctorate in anthropology, focusing on urban community structures and social dynamics." Sophia found herself falling naturally into conversation. It's fascinating how different communities form their own cultural norms, even within the same city. Robert's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "How intriguing, and I imagine that gives you a unique perspective on gatherings like this one." "Actually, yes. Corporate events like this are really tribal rituals in designer clothing, the way people position themselves, form alliances, display status symbols. It's all very similar to community structures I've studied in other cultures, just with better champagne." Marcus watched in amazement as Sophia's observation sparked animated discussion. Within minutes, she had drawn Robert into a conversation about leadership dynamics that was both insightful and entertaining. Her natural curiosity and thoughtful questions had the older man completely charmed. As the evening progressed, Sophia continued to surprise him. When they were seated at dinner with a table of Marcus's colleagues and their spouses, she listened attentively to their conversations and asked questions that revealed genuine interest rather than polite obligation. She didn't try to impress anyone with knowledge she didn't have, but instead drew people out with her authentic curiosity about their work and lives. "So, Sophia," said Patricia Morrison, the wife of a senior partner, "how do you and Marcus find time for each other with your busy schedules?" Sophia glanced at Marcus, and he was struck by how naturally she seemed to understand the subtext of the question. "It's all about being intentional with the time we do have together. Marcus works incredibly hard, but when we're together, he's fully present. Quality over quantity, I suppose." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest at her words. Even though she was playing a role, there was something in her tone that suggested she meant what she said. Throughout the dinner, he found himself studying her profile as she talked with others, noting the way she listened with her whole attention and how her laughter seemed to light up their entire table. When the dancing began, Marcus felt nervous. For the first time all evening. "I should probably warn you that I'm not much of a dancer," he admitted as he led her onto the floor. "Lucky for you, I grew up with 4 brothers who needed dance partners for their school events," Sophia replied, placing her hand in his. "Just follow my lead and try not to step on the dress." As they moved together to the soft jazz melody, Marcus was acutely aware of every point of contact, her hand in his palm against the small of her back, the whisper of silk between them. She was an excellent dancer, graceful and confident, and she made him feel more coordinated than he had any right to be. "You're doing great," she murmured, close enough that he could catch the subtle scent of her perfume. "For someone who claims not to dance, you're surprisingly natural at this." "I have an excellent teacher," he replied, surprised by the huskiness in his own voice. As the song ended, they remained on the dance floor for a moment longer than necessary, and Marcus found himself reluctant to step away. Around them, other couples continued to sway to the music, but he was barely aware of anything beyond the woman in his arms, the way she was looking at him as if she was seeing something in him that even he didn't know was there. The spell was broken when someone tapped him on the shoulder. "Marcus, old friend, been hiding this lovely lady from us all evening." The rest of the night passed in a blur of introductions and conversations, but Marcus found his attention continually drawn back to Sophia. She had transformed what he'd expected to be an ordeal into something unexpectedly enjoyable.
More than
that, she had made him feel like the best version of himself. Confident, interesting, worthy of the genuine affection she seemed to radiate. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave, Marcus realized that what had started as a business transaction had become something far more complicated. Sophia had kept her end of the bargain perfectly, but somewhere between her first genuine laugh and the way she had looked at him during their dance, had begun to forget that any of this was pretend. The revelation 3 days after the Excellence Awards dinner, Marcus found himself taking an unusual route to work that happened to pass by Rosie's cafe. He told himself it was mere coincidence, but the truth was more complicated. Since Saturday night, he hadn't been able to concentrate on anything for more than a few minutes without his thoughts drifting back to Sophia. The way she had laughed at his awkward joke about quarterly projections, how naturally she had fit into conversations with his colleagues, the moment during their dance when the pretense had seemed to fall away entirely, he had paid her the agreed-upon amount the night of the dinner. Adding an extra $1,000 for what he told himself was simply exceptional service. But as he handed her the envelope in the back of the town car, something in her expression had made him hesitate. She had looked almost sad as she tucked the money into her purse. He couldn't shake the feeling that the payment had somehow cheapened what had felt like a genuinely magical evening through the cafe window. He could see Sophia behind the counter, her hair in its familiar messy bun, a coffee-stained apron tied around her waist. She was laughing with a customer, her whole face animated in a way that reminded him of how she had looked during their dinner conversation. The contrast between this Sophia and the elegant woman who had charmed Robert Blackstone was striking. Yet somehow both versions felt equally authentic. Marcus pushed through the cafe door, the small bell announcing his arrival. Sophia looked up from the espresso machine, and her smile faltered slightly when she saw him. "Marcus." "Hi." "Ow." She finished steaming milk with practiced efficiency before approaching the counter. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee, black." He paused, studying her face for some hint of what she was thinking. "How have you been?" "Busy. Finals season is approaching, so between work and my dissertation defense prep, I barely have time to sleep. She poured his coffee with steady hands, but he noticed she avoided meeting his eyes directly. How about you? I hope the dinner served its purpose. It did. Better than I could have hoped, actually. Marcus accepted the coffee cup, their fingers. Brushing briefly, "You were incredible that night, Sophia. I don't think I thanked you properly." "You thanked me quite generously," she replied, and there was something in her tone that made him realize she was referring to more than just words. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Marcus sipped his coffee and searched for something to say that might recapture the easy rapport they had shared during the dinner. "Your dissertation defense, when is it scheduled? Assuming I can finish the final chapter, sometime in the next 6 weeks. I'm hoping to graduate this spring." Sophia began wiping down the already clean counter, her movements restless. "Research has been challenging, though. Academic conferences, travel for interviews, access to certain archives, it all costs more than I initially budgeted for." Marcus set down his coffee cup more forcefully than he intended. "Much do you need?" The question hung in the air between them, and Marcus immediately realized his mistake. Sophia's expression shuddered completely, and she took a step back from the counter. "Excuse me? I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. I just thought if you're struggling financially, I could help. As a friend, a friend." Sophia's voice was carefully neutral. "Is that what we are, Marcus?" "I'd like to think so. The other night it felt like we had a real connection. I know it started as a business arrangement, but what?" Sophia interrupted, her composure finally cracking. "You've thought that because you paid me to pretend to care about you for one evening, I might be interested in a more permanent arrangement? What exactly are you offering here, Marcus?" The accusation hit him like a physical blow. "That's not what I meant at all. I was simply offering to help someone I care about, someone you care about, or someone whose company you'd like to purchase." Sophia's eyes flashed with anger and something that looked like hurt. "Do you have any idea how it feels to wonder if someone values you or just your ability to provide a service?" Marcus stared at her, finally understanding the source of her distress. "Sophia, you're completely misunderstanding my intentions. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a wealthy man who enjoyed having a woman on his arm is trying to figure out how to keep that arrangement going." She untied her apron with sharp, angry movements. "I have a degree in anthropology, Marcus. I understand transactional relationships better than most people." "This isn't transactional," Marcus protested. But even as he said the words, he could see how his offer must have sounded to her. "I genuinely enjoyed spending time with you. I thought you felt the same way." "I did feel the same way," Sophia admitted quietly, and the past tense of her statement made his chest tighten. "That's exactly the problem. For a few hours that night, I forgot that you had hired me to be there. I started to believe that your interest in what I had to say was real, that the way you looked at me during our dance meant something. But then you handed me that envelope, and I remembered that my company was just another business expense." Marcus felt the conversation slipping away from him, but he didn't know how to fix it. Everything he wanted to say seemed to make things worse. The money was payment for services rendered. Nothing more. "It has nothing to do with how I feel about you now. But don't you see? That's exactly the problem. You can't separate the two, because this is how you solve problems. You write a check. You need a date. You hire one. You want to help someone. You offer money. It never occurs to you that some things can't be bought." Before Marcus could respond, the cafe door chimed again, and 2 customers entered, chatting loudly about their morning meetings. Sophia immediately shifted back into her professional demeanor, greeting the newcomers with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I should go," Marcus said quietly, leaving a $20 bill on the counter for his $3 coffee. As he walked toward the door, he heard Sophia call his name. He turned back hopefully, but her expression remained guarded. "For what it's worth, I had a wonderful time that night. I just wish it could have stayed wonderful." Marcus left the cafe feeling like he had just lost something precious that he hadn't even realized he'd found. As he walked back to his office, he replayed their conversation, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. Sophia was right. His instinct to solve problems with money had turned what could have been the beginning of something real into a transaction that had poisoned any possibility of genuine connection. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had hired Sophia to help him avoid the awkwardness of attending a social event alone, but in doing so, he had created a far more painful situation. He had discovered someone who saw past his wealth to the person underneath, only to realize that his wealth had made it impossible for her to trust that his feelings were genuine. As Marcus sat in his office later that morning, staring out at Maldes, the city skyline, he couldn't shake the memory of how Sophia had looked during their dance, radiant, present, completely absorbed in the moment they were sharing. He had felt more like himself in those few minutes than he had in years, and now he might never have the chance to feel that way again. The reckoning 2 weeks passed without Marcus returning to Rosie's cafe, though he thought about it every day. He threw himself into work with renewed intensity, staying late at the office and taking on additional projects that kept his mind occupied. His colleagues commented on his improved focus, but Marcus knew he was simply running from the uncomfortable realization that Sophia had been right about him. The revelation came crashing home on a Thursday morning when his assistant, Jennifer, knocked on his office door with an expression of barely contained panic. "Mr. Wellington, we have a problem. The Henderson account, they're pulling their investment. All of it, $22 million. Marcus looked up from his computer screen, the numbers on his monitor suddenly meaningless. What happened? Apparently Henderson's nephew works at Morrison & Associates. He's been feeding them information about our strategy, and they made a counteroffer that blew ours out of the water. Jennifer set a folder on his desk with trembling hands. "Mr. Blackstone wants to see you immediately." The walk to Robert Blackstone's corner office felt longer than usual. Marcus had been with the firm for 8 years, building his reputation on careful analysis and calculated risks. The Henderson account had been his largest personal success, and losing it felt like watching his career crumble in real time. Robert was standing by his window when Marcus entered, his usually warm demeanor replaced by the steely expression that had made him legendary in financial circles. "Sit down, Marcus." Robert's voice was clipped, professional. "I assume you know why you're here. The Henderson account." "Yes, sir." $22 million, Marcus? $22 million that? We've been managing for 6 years. Gone because we were outmaneuvered by a competitor who had inside information. Robert turned from the window, his expression grim. "The partners are asking questions about your judgment, your attention to detail. Some are suggesting that you've been distracted lately." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Robert, I can explain, Ken. Because from where I sit, it looks like you missed warning signs that should have been obvious to someone with your experience." Robert sat down behind his desk, his movements deliberate and controlled. "The Henderson nephew has been asking pointed questions about our fee structure for months. Our contacts at their company noticed unusual interest in confidential documents. These aren't subtle clues, Marcus." The weight of Robert's disappointment was almost worse than the professional consequences. Marcus had always prided himself on his relationship with the older man, seeing him as both mentor and father figure. Now he could see that trust eroding. "In real time? You're right," Marcus said quietly. "I missed the signs. I've been distracted, and there's no excuse for that." "What's going on with you, son? This isn't like you. The Marcus Wellington I know doesn't make careless mistakes like this." For a moment, Marcus considered deflecting, making excuses about workload or market pressures. But Sophia's words echoed in his memory. "It never occurs to you that some things can't be bought." Maybe it was time to start being honest about things that couldn't be fixed with money or strategy. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want my life to look like," Marcus said slowly. "About whether success is worth it if you don't have anyone to share it with. About whether I've been so focused on building wealth that I've forgotten how to build relationships." Robert's expression softened slightly. "This is about a woman. It's about realizing that I don't know how to connect with people without using money as a buffer. I hired someone to accompany me to the Excellence Awards dinner because I was too proud to show up alone, and in the process, I discovered that I don't actually know how to have genuine relationships anymore." "The lovely young woman you brought to the dinner, Sophia?" Marcus nodded, surprised that Robert remembered her name. "I ruined any chance I had with her because I couldn't separate my feelings from my instinct to solve problems with money. And now I'm ruining my career because I can't stop thinking about what she said to me." Robert was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus with the same intensity he brought to evaluating investments. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "You know, Marcus, I've been in this business for 35 years. I've seen brilliant people destroy themselves chasing money, and I've seen wealthy people die alone because they never learned that relationships require more than financial security." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I've also seen people find their way back from mistakes if they're willing to do the work." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the Henderson account was a significant loss, but it's not the end of the world. You're a talented analyst, and one mistake doesn't erase 8 years of excellent work. But if you keep making decisions from a place of emotional turmoil, it will be the end of your career here." Marcus felt a flicker of hope. "Are you giving me another chance?" "I'm giving you a choice. You can take a leave of absence, unpaid. But with your position held to figure out whatever personal issues are affecting your judgment, or you can stay and risk making more costly mistakes while you're distracted." The offer was more generous than Marcus had any right to expect, and he felt a rush of gratitude toward the man who had been his mentor for so many years. But more than that, he felt something he hadn't experienced in weeks: clarity. "How long of a leave are we talking about?" "Take a month. Figure out what you want your life to look like, and then come back ready to be the analyst I know you can be." Robert's expression grew warmer. "And Marcus, if this woman is worth losing sleep over, maybe she's worth fighting for properly." That evening, Marcus sat in his empty penthouse apartment, looking out at the city lights and thinking about Robert's words. For the first time since his divorce, he felt like he had permission to want something more than professional success. The question was whether it was too late to repair the damage he had done with Sophia, as he pulled out his phone to scroll through her contact information. Marcus realized that for all his wealth and business acumen, he had never learned the most important skill of all: how to apologize to someone whose trust he had broken, and how to prove that his feelings were genuine without using money as proof of his sincerity. The conversation with Sophia would have to wait until he figured out how to have it properly. But for the first time in weeks, Marcus felt like he had a plan that wasn't based on transactions or calculations. He was going to learn how to build something real. The truth: Marcus spent the first week of his leave of absence doing something he hadn't done in years. Absolutely nothing productive. He slept late, took long walks through neighborhoods he'd never explored, and read books that had nothing to do with market analysis or investment strategies. By the second week, the forced inactivity had cleared his head enough to recognize what he needed to do. Instead of returning to Rosie's Cafe, Marcus began volunteering at the community center, 3 blocks from Sophia's workplace. The director, an energetic woman named Carmen Rodriguez, had been skeptical when a man in an expensive suit showed up asking to help with their adult literacy program. But his genuine enthusiasm and surprising patience with struggling readers had quickly won her over. "You're different than I expected," Carmen told him after his second week of tutoring sessions. "Most of the wealthy donors who come through here want their names on plaques, not chalk on their hands." Marcus looked down at his fingers, stained with marker ink from helping a 60-year-old construction worker practice writing his name. "I'm learning that there are things more valuable than recognition." It was during his 3rd week at the community center that Sophia found him. He was sitting at a small table with Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman working toward her GED, when he looked up to see a familiar figure standing in the doorway. Sophia was watching him with an expression of confusion and curiosity, her arms crossed over her chest. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" Mrs. Patterson looked between them with interest. "You know my teacher, dear? He's been wonderful help with my reading comprehension." Sophia's eyebrows rose. "Your teacher?" "I volunteer here a few afternoons a week," Marcus explained, suddenly self-conscious about the simple t-shirt and jeans he was wearing instead of his usual suit. "Mrs. Patterson is working on her diploma." "I'll be," Mrs. Patterson said with a delighted smile. "Sophia's been helping with our job placement program for months. Small world, isn't it?" After Mrs. Patterson gathered her materials and left, Marcus and Sophia found themselves alone in the community center's main room. The space was cheerfully chaotic, with children's artwork covering the walls and the lingering scent of the afternoon's cooking class in the air. "I didn't know you volunteered here," Marcus said, genuinely surprised. "I didn't know you did either. When did you start?" 3 weeks ago. After our conversation at the cafe, I realized I needed to figure out how to contribute to something. Without expecting anything in return, he paused, studying her face for some hint of what she was thinking. "What about you?" "About 6 months. I started coming here to research community support networks for my dissertation, but I kept coming back because... She trailed off, seeming to search for the right words. "Because it reminds me why I chose anthropology in the first place. I wanted to understand how people build connections with each other." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, surrounded by evidence of community and collaboration. Finally, Marcus found the courage to say what he had been practicing. "For weeks, Sophia, I owe you an apology. Not just for that morning at the cafe, but for the entire way I handled everything from the beginning." He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "You were right about me. I do try to solve problems with money because it's the only tool I've ever learned to use. But you weren't a problem to be solved. You were a person I was lucky enough." To meet Sophia's expression softened slightly, but she remained guarded. "What changed your mind?" "I nearly lost my job because I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. My mentor gave me a leave of absence to figure out what I actually want my life to look like." Marcus gestured around the community center. "Turns out I want it to look more like this and less like corporate dinners and business transactions." "You took time off work to volunteer at a community center?" "I took time off work to learn how to be the kind of person who deserves a second chance with someone like you." The honesty of the statement surprised even Marcus, not asking for anything, "Sophia. I just wanted you to know that our conversation changed me in ways I didn't think were possible." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see her processing his words. Finally, she walked over to one of the small tables and sat down, gesturing for him to join her. "The night of the dinner, when we were dancing," she said slowly, "I forgot that you had hired me. For those few minutes, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. It was the most natural thing in the world. I felt the same way. But then reality came back, and I realized I had no way of knowing if what I was feeling was real or just part of the performance. And when you offered to help with my dissertation expenses," she shook her head, "it felt like you were trying to hire me again." Marcus reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. "If I could take back that offer, I would. Not because I don't want to help you, but because I should have found a way to show you I cared that didn't involve money." "How would you do it differently?" The question caught him off guard, but as he looked around the community center at the artwork created by people learning to express themselves, at the job board where neighbors helped neighbors find opportunities, at the simple evidence of people caring for each other without expectation of return, the answer became clear. I'd ask if you wanted to volunteer here together. I'd offer to help you practice your dissertation defense presentation. I'd learn about anthropology because it matters to you, not because I was trying to impress you." He met her eyes directly. "I try to be someone worth your time instead of someone who could afford to pay for it." Sophia was quiet for so long that Marcus began to worry he had said too much. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "I defended my dissertation last week. Passed." "Congratulations," Marcus said, meaning it completely. "It's incredible, Sophia. You should be proud. Thank you. It feels surreal, actually. After so many years of work, I keep expecting someone to tell me it was all a mistake." And for the first time in weeks, it reached her eyes. "I have a job offer from the university. Assistant professor, starting in the fall. That's wonderful. You deserve it. The thing is," Sophia continued, "I've been thinking about what you said that night about authenticity being refreshing. I've spent so much time studying how communities form that I forgot how to actually be part of one myself. Coming here reminded me." Marcus waited, sensing there was more she wanted to say. "I missed you," she admitted. "Even though I was angry, even though I thought you saw me as just another transaction, I missed talking with you. I kept hoping you'd come back to the cafe so we could try again. I stayed away because I thought that's what you wanted. Maybe it was for a while. But then Mrs. Patterson started talking about her wonderful new tutor. Carmen mentioned a volunteer who was helping with grant applications, and I realized you were here, being exactly the person I hoped you could be. Marcus felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. Does that mean you might be willing to start over? No business arrangements, no financial transactions, just two people getting to know each other? Sophia smiled, and this time it was the radiant expression he remembered from their dance. I think I'd like that very much. As they walked out of the community center together, Marcus realized that for the first time in his adult life, was entering into a relationship where success couldn't be measured in dollars or calculated. As a return on investment, it was terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely worth the risk. 3 months later, when Sophia started her position as assistant professor of anthropology and Marcus returned to work with a renewed sense of purpose, they would look back on this moment as the real beginning of their story, not the night when. He hired her to pretend to care about him, but the afternoon when they chose to care about each other for real